Earlier this week, the newly not-so-royal royals, the Duke and Duchess of Suffolk, who you probably know better as Meghan and Harry Markle, delivered a stern rebuke to a large swathe of the British tabloid press, saying via email that the couple would no longer be cooperating with several major newspapers as they start their new lives as slightly less wealthy but still millionaire philanthropists in Los Angeles. The move is seen as a response to the years of criticism which the couple endured under the scrutiny of the relentless British press, including, and not limited to, Markle's ongoing lawsuit with the Daily Mail, which she says tricked her father into embarrassing her during her royal nuptials, which in itself is kind of impressive, that it took the evil machinations of a media conglomerate an entire year to get Meghan's dad to ruin her wedding day. For most of us, it just takes an open bar and a band that knows the chords to Sweet Caroline. Now, there's no doubt that the papers in question, The Sun, the Daily Mail, the Daily Express, and the Mirror, have been excoriating in their disdain for Markle, who they apparently see as an uncouth interloper who had the unmitigated gall to be less than 100% Caucasian during state functions. And indeed, there seems to have been a slight tempering of such criticism this week, or rather a notable reduction in coverage of the Duke and Duchess of Suffolk. They kept their titles, by the way, in the divorce, which I can't blame them for. The last people Americans willingly called Duke were Ellington and John Wayne. So I can understand why a whey-faced ginge like Harry would want to shoehorn himself into that rarefied company. Most of the papers mentioned in the couple's email seem pretty stung by the slapdown, with something called the Society of Editors likening it to a Trumpian attack on fake news outlets, saying, and I quote, by appearing to dictate which media they will work with and which they will ignore, they, no doubt unintentionally, give succor to the rich and powerful everywhere to use their example as an excuse to attack the media when it suits them. Which is pretty fucking hilarious, coming from a group named the Society of Editors, that they claim to be against the interests of the rich and powerful. Quite aside from the fact that when I picture the Society of Editors, I imagine a bunch of red-faced oligarchs from a William Hogarth cartoon, scarfing down beef bourguignon in between gulps of vintage port while threatening to beat the help with a riding crop. The owners of all these papers are the rich and powerful. Just to take one example, the owner and publisher of the Daily Mail, the celebrity-soaked rag that has a daytime TV show in the US that makes TMZ look like the McLaughlin Group, they're owned by the fourth Earl of Rothermere, a fabulously wealthy tycoon who not only inherited his media empire but also claims non-dom status to avoid paying billions of pounds in tax, despite the fact that he has a house in London. But his paper, the Daily Mail, is precisely the type of nationalist tabloid that rails against Johnny foreigners like Meghan Markle for coming to England, getting rich off the intentions of the working class, and then shirking their obligations. But as low-key racist and hypocritical this particular slice of the scurrilous British press is, this week was a good example of how the only thing worse than being attacked by the likes of the Mail and the Express is to be praised by them. For example, this week, the Daily Express, a publication so old-fashioned in English that their logo is literally a medieval knight. In case you're in any doubt as to their ideological bent, just remember they went with a symbol that predates the invention of printing. This week, as the United Kingdom continued to rack up hundreds of COVID-19 deaths on a daily basis and surpassing 20,000 fatalities, the Express's website reran a story about the, quote, heartbreak that Prince William and his wife Kate were undergoing as they were unable to regularly visit their three-story, 10-bedroom country home, Admiral Hall in Norfolk, which was particularly harrowing for them because it had been a wedding gift from the Queen. You know how some newlyweds are registered at Target and others are registered at Homes and Gardens, literally? Now, apart from the fact that this blithely reprinted story is now factually inaccurate, the Cambridges, as they're known, are in fact holed up at Admiral Hall during the pandemic shutdown. Because when life gives you lemons, have the servants make them into lemonade. Papers like the Express and the Mail regularly rerun old stories about the royals without updating them or adding any new context because they're merely trying to satiate a public which they believe is ravenous for news about them. And that coverage is as fawning of Will and Kate as it is caustic towards Meg and Har. This is an actual quote from the Sun newspaper from this week. Like monarchs down a long line of history, Prince William has proved himself strongest as his country faces its darkest hours. Jesus Christ. You can't read that without imagining some unctuous lickspittle in bright blue tights bowing and scraping as he backs out of a throne room. And for what noble act of selflessness has the prince and his missus been lauded with encomiums? Did he personally helicopter COVID patients to a hospital? Did he turn the aforementioned Animal Hall into a care facility? No, he's been applauded for, well, applauding. In short, that he and his wife were able to wrangle their little brood of blue bloods out of the living room and onto the porch for a brief ovation to the country's long suffering healthcare workers. I mean, good for you and all. But it's weird that they would highlight that and not say the fact that just last week, Meghan and Harry were personally making and delivering home cooked meals to homes in Los Angeles. But maybe it's not whether the coverage is good or bad that matters. Maybe that's why Meghan decided to pull the plug. Let's face it, it was Meghan that pulled the plug. Everyone needs a Meghan in their life. And I'm not just saying this because that happens to be my girlfriend's name and I'm trying to score some pandemic points. Heck, maybe your Meghan isn't even called Meghan or even a woman. But a Meghan is someone who comes into your life, looks at your situation and says, well, we're not putting up with this shit anymore. Think about it. The insatiable hounding of the great British press drove Harry's mother into a wall in Paris, and he still didn't cut ties with the hypocritical shitgibbons that run these papers. It took someone who'd gone from opening suitcases on Deal or No Deal to dealing and not dealing with open cases on Suits to step in and point out the insanity that is royal coverage. Even if you win, you lose. Not to be hyperbolic, but giving a shit about the lives of the royals, any royals, is insane. I hate that I know anything about the Markles or Cambridges or any of the chinless asswagons that a demented British press thinks are newsworthy. The fact that royal correspondent is a job title and not the most non-essential employee is fully bonkers. Even the leftist paper, The Guardian, wrapped up their coverage of Harry and Meg's media embargo with a quote from an unnamed royal correspondent in an act of ironic obliviousness that they would normally dedicate 2,000 words to. Yet so ingrained is the notion in the British press that they need to cover the royals. The fascination with that entire mob of feckless, jobless, and pitiably bewildered elites trying to justify the disgusting level of privilege they enjoy needs to be eradicated during the post-COVID Brave New World, only take what you need realignment of priorities. You think the Queen needed to social distance? You weren't allowed to touch her before all this bullshit happened. The fact that Prince Andrew thought that his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein was on the up and up proves this is the bunch of people who were already mentally isolating for decades. And yet the press still feels the need to reframe their ability to quarantine in a literal palace as somehow bravery and or leadership. The whole setup is a revolting sickness. And maybe Meghan Markle is the only one of that unhappy breed that got that, and that's why they hated it. And that's why she's finally shutting them down.